Hi, we are going to do Chapter 4, Section 2, Ocean Habitats. Today we're going to learn the concepts into what zones do scientists divide the ocean and how are marine organisms classified. Okay. At first glance, an ocean may seem lifeless. As you walk along the beach, your feet sink in the soft wet sand. You may notice some dark tangled seaweed that is washed upon the shore. A few seagulls screech and swoop overhead. Otherwise, all is calm. You stop to gaze out at the horizon. The ocean stretches as far as the eye can see. Waves crash against the shore, but you see no signs of life in the water. Look closer. Right beneath your feet, you can see evidence of living things. Tiny round holes are signs of burrowing clams. These clams dig deep down into the sand. This burrowing enables the clams to hide from predators and avoid being washed away by the tide. If you had to wade into the water, you might be able to spot a sand crab feeding in the surf, and far out to the sea a school of dolphins swim by. Their bodies form graceful arches as they dive in and out of the water. An ocean may seem lifeless, but many different organisms inhabit this vast watery environment. Okay, we're going to talk about these ocean zones just so you have a clear look at them. So we have the intertidal zone, the Arctic zone, and the open ocean zone. Notice how they're in relationship to the ocean floor that we just talked about. So this international tide is in the continent, the beginning of the continental shelf. The Arctic zone goes from the low tide all the way to the end of the continental shelf, and then the continental slope and the abyssal plain and the deep ridges and everything, the rest of the ocean is the open ocean zone. In the open ocean zone, we have three zones: a surface zone, a transition zone, and a deep zone. We're going to talk about all of these. I just want you to refer back to this drawing or this figure if you need references of where things are. Ocean zones and conditions. You can think of the ocean as a huge community that includes living and non-living things. In some ways, the ocean community resembles a human city or town. Typically, cities and towns are divided into several zones. Some zones consist mostly of houses and apartment buildings. Other zones have stores and shops or factories and office buildings. So here's the ocean zones. The ocean too can be divided into zones, as shown in Figure 6. You walk on the sandy beach, for example, you took place in the intertidal zone. Ocean zones include the intertidal zone, the Arctic zone, and the open ocean zone. So let's look at that again. Intertidal zone, Arctic zone, and open ocean zone. At the highest high tide line on land, the intertidal zone begins. From there, the zones stretch out to the point on the continental shelf exposed by the lowest low tide. The Arctic zone extends from the low tide line out to the edge of the continental shelf. Beyond the edge of the continental shelf lies the open ocean zone. This zone includes the deepest, darkest parts of the ocean. You will learn more about these ocean zones in section 3 and 4. Physical conditions. Each ocean zone has its characteristic physical conditions. These conditions help determine which organism can live in that zone. For example, light does not penetrate far beneath the ocean's surface. Organisms that need light for photosynthesis must live near the surface of the ocean. In contrast, in the deep ocean, pressure is high. Organisms that live deep in the ocean must be able to withstand this force. Okay, so which ocean zone is furthest from the shore? Obviously, it's the open ocean zone. Okay, life in the ocean. Okay, on land, most organisms live on or near the surface. In the ocean, on the other hand, is inhabited by organisms at every depth. Scientists classify marine organisms according to where they live and how they move. Figure 7 shows the three categories of ocean organisms: plankton, nekton, and benthos. Okay, we're going to talk about each type. Plankton are tiny algae and animals that float in the water and are carried by waves and current. Algae plankton include geometric shaped diatoms. Animal plankton include some tiny young fish and microscopic crustaceans such as cope- uh, um, copepods. Okay, so all of these are plankton here. Okay, nekton. Nekton are free swimming animals that can move through the water column. Squids, most fish, and marine animals such as whales and seals are nekton. Okay, so this is nekton here. Okay, all of these. Benthos are organisms that inhabit the ocean floor. Some benthos, like crabs, sea stars, octopus, and lobsters, move from place to place. Others, like sponges and sea anemones, stay in one location. So down here is the benthos area. Okay. So here is the ocean food web. So just like on the surface of the earth, we have a web of the hierarchy of what animals eat so that they can survive. Okay, with the same thing, the food web is also in the ocean. Relationship among organisms. Plankton, nekton, and benthos are all found in marine habitats. Many plankton and benthos are algae. Like plants, algae use sunlight to produce their own food through photosynthesis. Photosynthetic, photosynthetic plankton are called producers. Other plankton and benthos, as well as nekton, eat either algae or other organisms. They are called consumers. Finally, some organisms include many benthos break down waste and the remains of other organisms. They are called decomposers. So we have the same thing here on Earth. These are just the animals in the ocean. Ocean food webs. All of the feeding relationships that exist in a habitat make up a food web. A typical ocean food web is shown in Figure 8. Each organism in the Arctic food web depends either directly or indirectly on the algae plankton. Throughout the ocean, plankton are a source of food for other organisms of all sizes. If you think of sharks as sharp-toothed meat-eating hunters, you may be surprised to learn that biggest sharks of all feed directly on tiny plankton. Many whales, including the Earth's largest animal, the blue whale, also feed only on plankton. So let's look at this. Okay, so we have the algae and the plankton. We have the animal plankton here. Okay, and then they feed the silver sides, which are fish, and the fish and these plankton feed the loons, the Arctic tern, and the sea ducks. Now, we haven't seen the other side of the food web here, which is also the fish and the animals and plankton feed the whale, the Arctic cod, and the Arctic cod. The blue whales also eat the Arctic cod, and the ringed seals, which then feed the polar bears. So it's a whole web that makes everything in the ocean able to survive. Okay, this is the end of our section 2. This is your homework for tonight. I will see you all tomorrow.